Okay, and do you want to start the recording?
Yes, we're rolling.
We're already rolling, okay. So good evening, everybody. I'm Catherine Archuleta. I'm your facilitator for the evening. And sorry, we're starting a little bit late, but we were gathering everyone. And what I'd like to do is, before we start the meeting, is to go around the table. If everybody could just introduce themselves and your affiliation, and then we'll begin the meeting. So we'll start over here.
Okay, I'm Carrie Black, member of Global Civic Partners and business owner here in Joeville.
I'm Beth Goldstein, Open Consulting, and I have a very limited list.
Marcy Walker with the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center of Communications and Outreach.
Mike Bouchard, Executive Director for the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Devin Saunders, Executive Director of the Denver North Business Association.
Ann Hayes with Westfield Company, developer in Elyria, Swansea.
Kyle Kopp with Project Angel Heart.
Anna Varela with Tierra Colectiva. I'm also a neighbor.
Here for Northfleet with part of the training taking place of our business manager.
Michaela Holmes with the Center for Community Law.
Joe Henry, local business.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Nally with the National Western Center Authority.
And Jared, would you like to introduce yourself? Here's the seat.
Hey, everybody, Chair Hopelitz with the authority.
Here's the seat here. Jared, anything up there?
And I'm sorry, I'm Michelle Stern with Center for Community Development.
And I think we're now, let's start. Angela, can we start with you?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Garcia. I am a Global resident.
Kezia?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kessia. I work at the Birdseed Collective.
Anthony?
Good evening, everybody. Anthony Aragon with the National Western Center, joining you remotely tonight.
Slavica?
Good evening, Slavica Park with CRL Associates and also representing National Western Stock Show.
AE? We'll skip over AE. Lori? Lori's autopilot. Is that? Okay, AE is passing. She's at another meeting. Chris?
Hi, everyone. Chris Callahan, Community Engagement Specialist with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure here in Denver. Nice to see you all.
And I don't know who, Harmony?
Harmony Cummings, founder and director of the Greenhouse Connection Center Community Space in Elyria.
Thank you. Let's see, did I get everybody? Francisco? So Francisco is, oh, there he is. Francisco.
Language Act LLC Spanish interpreter. Make that announcement.
And Nora?
He's interpreting right now.
Nora's interpreting and she's our other interpreter. So, and I don't know who Lori is, but hopefully we'll meet Lori soon. So again, I'm Catherine Archuleta. I'm gonna, usually at these meetings, we try to do an icebreaker, but we're gonna skip because we've started 15 minutes late and we have a lot to cover this evening. And so if we could pull up the, what I'd like to do is start out always with our, how we're gonna work together, because this is really important. This is the value, these are the values. For those of you who are here for the first time, that were established by the CAC a couple years ago, that in every one of our meetings, we try to understand that respect and trust do matter, that openness and transparency is critical, that we encourage others to share, inspire one another, and be open to new ideas, because all of our voices matter. And it's really important as we have these discussions tonight that we share the time that we have to make sure that every voice is heard. We understand that we're a community that faces many realities each and every day, and that partnership through collaboration and cooperation is really important. The next slide is how we make decisions at the CAC. This was part of the work that was done last year on the roles and responsibilities of the CAC. The CAC formally adopted its roles and responsibilities, and these are included reaching consensus. So we make decisions by consensus. I'm not going to go through those, but just for those of you who are new here tonight, just to let you know that decision-making is done by consensus. So let me go through the agenda with you tonight because we have a lot to present and here, we especially want to hear back from community. So if we were having an icebreaker, I'd ask you about some good news that you would like to share. So maybe think about what that good news is for each and every one of us each day, because there's always something good that's happening. We're going to spend some time on community updates. We're going to hear from Mike Bouchard from the city on reconnecting communities in the neighborhoods grant. And then we're going to hear from Beth Vogelsay on the GES program of projects. And Steve is going to share with us the process, the RFP process, the meetings we had last week, and talk a little bit about next steps. And we, as always, will have time for public comment. So a lot to go over tonight. And so I think we'll just go ahead and start with community updates and ask anybody in the community if there's anything that you would like to share with one another. And any updates?
I can go.
Okay.
This is my first time in campaigning, and just happy to be here, but I work with groups of people who do shared entrepreneurship. And so I just wanted to share, we're starting to look at creating a landscaping co-op, something that might actually be able to serve the National Western Center at some point. And just wanting to start, they were in early stages of the feasibility and organizing workers. So like if anybody knows people working in landscaping and GES, that's where we'd like to start organizing. So that was one thing I wanted to share. And then just also, we have a community event coming up on June 6th around strengthening the Colorado cooperative ecosystem, and wanted to share that with you guys also.
There were two gentlemen at our community meeting last week who were landscapers, so we should try to connect you with them.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Any other news from the community?
Sure, I can share.
Oh, good.
May 1st, we have our tree planting for the food forest. So thank you all who came to the blessing. It was a good time. And the food forest tree planting is gonna do, the 9 to 12 will be a little bit more soil prep. The ground, of course, was the firmest food forest ground ever. Gravel and rock and all the challenges. So the actual tree planting itself will be from 1 to 4. So if you are interested in getting busy on Wednesday and you have a particular inclination, the trees are in the afternoon, the soil prep is in the morning. I will be out of town for the first time. I don't think I've ever said this in this room. I will be out of town. So I'm sorry if you're only going to things to meet me, but there are plenty of other reasons to go to the food forest and we'd love to have you.
Other information to share? Anybody on the, I can't see, do you see anybody, Jenna? Chris?
I do have just a little information I'll post in the chat as well, but the Globeville and Elyria Swansea Community Advisory Group, the GES CAG, is going to have a community open house tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. At Project Angel Heart. Thank you for hosting, Kyle. I see you in the room. And we will be kind of covering the final design for the Washington Street reconstruction. And Beth will kind of expand on that a little later in the meeting. But definitely a great meeting with lots of good substance. So hope to see a good group of you there. And we'll also be adding a virtual join option. We got some feedback that folks were interested in that. So I will be sending out an email probably a little bit during this meeting with that Zoom information. So if you weren't able to attend in person and still want to kind of talk with and learn from the project team, definitely check that out. Additionally, we'll just give a high level overview of kind of construction schedule for the next coming years and months, and give an update on the 44th and Broadway project, which is nearing completion.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else?
I have one. I received this morning from the Garden Place Academy that they have their spring carnival on Thursday, May 16th from 4 to 7. We've got food, games, prizes, fun. Tickets are on pre-sale on the playground after school starting on Monday, May 6th, just after Cinco de Mayo. You can get tickets there for this carnival.
Oh, great.
There's another one on.
Yeah, Forney Museum,
Yeah.
May 4th.
The 4th.
They're having their Cinco de Mayo at Forney Museum. Thank you, Marcy.
And wasn't there, I think, wasn't Swansea having, there's another carnival.
Swansea Elementary is having one on May 11th. as well,
Okay.
from 10 to 11.
Lots of carnivals. Good fun. Okay. I don't see any other hands. Looks like we've got the community information. That will give us an opportunity now to hear more about the community grant. And I think that's right on the agenda.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And so I would ask
Yes.
Mike and Marcy.
Yep, thank you so much. We'll let Jenna pull that up.
Give me 1 sec.
No worries.
Issues with all these screens. I need to have double screens there.
Okay. So as I think a lot of people have heard, we were awarded. Oops.
Hang on just 1 minute. Technical difficulty.
Sorry, my,
You're fine.
to log back into.
All right.
It keeps crashing on me, so hopefully it won't.
I can do it from memory if I need to.
You should start talking.
Yeah.
Take it.
So, no problem. No worries. So as I think many people know, we, the city, were awarded a grant from the Department of Transportation, a federal Department of Transportation, specifically a Reconnecting Communities grant. It is actually 132 different awards were made as part of this recent grant cycle, $3.3 billion of Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act money. So this is the signature bill that the Biden administration put through. And these are dollars that we are able, as the city, to capitalize on. We were awarded $35.4 million for 4 different projects. And we as the city are matching almost exactly half that. The total amount of all the projects together is 68. So we were awarded just over half of that from the federal government, and we are providing the other half as match through city dollars. This happened very quickly last fall. It started in August when we were really looking at the opportunity of this grant. We very quickly had to write a grant proposal in September. The timing was not great for community engagement and outreach. And we're realizing now that we should have done a better job of communicating out to groups like this, the community in general, about what this grant is and what it isn't. And so we are taking the opportunity to do that now. So in general, the grant itself, as I mentioned, it's US Department of Transportation, 132 communities, 3.3 billion. And it's very specifically to plan or construct transportation projects that do one or all of the following. So improving access to daily needs of the community, such as jobs, education, healthcare, food, and recreation. Fostering equitable development and restoration. Reconnecting communities, thus the name of the grant, by removing, retrofitting, or mitigating highways or other transportation facilities that create barriers to community connectivity. And finally, prioritizing disadvantaged communities. So these were the criteria that we put a grant proposal together to try to meet, to get what to us are essentially free dollars from the federal government that are allowing us to build, fully fund and build these 4 projects sooner than otherwise we would have been able to as the city. So had we not gotten this grant, we would still have had to have found this $35.4 million to fully fund these projects. So from our perspective, obviously, it's a huge win, it's a huge benefit, and it allows us to deliver these sooner than we otherwise would have been able to. So what they are specifically are the 4 projects shown here. You can see the total grant cost, or the total project cost of 68 million, the grant award at 35.4. The 4 projects are the Betty Cram Drive Bridge and 48th Avenue Greenway. So the Betty Cram Drive Bridge has always been a part of what we as NUCO were going to deliver. It changed slightly with the 48th Avenue Greenway. The alignment of that bridge shifted as the Greenway developed. And so the cost for that bridge increased. Also the amount of time, we would have already had that bridge in place had it not been for the coordination necessary with the Greenway. So long story short, the bridge and the Greenway combined as a project received $13.1 million to fully fund that and allow us to build that out in the next few years. Number 2 is the pedestrian bridge, again, an item, an asset that was always planned to be constructed as part of phases 1 and 2 of the National Western Center. Again, the cost from where we initially budgeted it back in 2018, substantially more. And so we received $10 million through this grant to fully fund and be able to implement and build that bridge. We anticipate starting construction on that bridge next year, pending a lot of negotiations and conversations with the feds. Now that it's been federalized, it comes with more strings attached and more hoops we need to jump through. But again, all a good problem to have at the end of the day. The third is improvements to an at-grade rail crossing on National Western Drive South. So that's number 3. So that's the existing BN crossing. As part of phases 1 and 2, there were initially 13 different at-grade crossings on this site before we began construction. We were able to eliminate 11 of those. There are 2 remaining, and this is one of them. The other is at the north end of National Western Drive South, where the DRIR crosses Race Court. But this one in particular, we have just under $500,000 to do some pedestrian and bike safety elements as part of that crossing to make it a safer crossing. And potentially maybe rolled into a larger project to build out the rest of National Western Drive South. If we think that's financially feasible, we're looking at that right now. But at a minimum, we will do pedestrian and bike safety improvements. And then finally, the DPS bus barn site, which is number 4, that large square on the east side of tracks, just south of the post office. That was a historical landfill site. We had already done some work to put in methane vents and methane mitigation and monitoring. So we've been already working on that site, but the full cleanup was not something that was funded until we got this grant at just under 12 million, matched with city dollars to completely clean up that site and make it part of the redevelopment of the triangle for future phases, which is everything to the east of the tracks once phases 1 and 2 are complete with their build out. So those are the 4 projects. And as I mentioned, kind of the punchline to all this is it provided us dollars to do this sooner than we otherwise would have been able to do. To be, I guess, maybe to be clear, because I know there's questions out there of, well, how much of this money is coming directly to the community or how much is going to CDOT? And the answer to both of those, well, the answer to CDOT is 0. CDOT is not involved at all in this grant. We as the city are the direct recipient of these funds. So just to clear that up. And the question about dollars directly to the community, given the nature of these dollars and what they can be awarded to fund, that was not even a possibility. That's one of the things, frankly, we could have done a better job communicating at the time. This is what these are for. This is what they're not for. There are lots of other opportunities for federal funding that could be a direct award or direct benefit to the community. And we are excited to have those conversations with groups like this in the community more broadly. But this particular grant really could only fund projects that the city was already planning to do, had already started design, had partial funding to supplement the 34.5 million, 35.4 million in the federal grant that we received. So if you go to the next slide, in terms of timeline, just to give people a sense of how this all happened, starting in August was really the point where the city was looking at the grant opportunity, a variety of different opportunities citywide, ultimately deciding this had the greatest potential. And so at that point, we had about a month to write what was a very involved grant proposal. So there was a lot of work that happened very quickly to get the grant written. We did have a letter that went to the CAC on September 26th. The timing of that, we would have loved to have come and presented, but I believe the CAC got canceled that month, or we weren't able to get on the agenda. So we did submit a letter. We also received some other letters of support from local businesses and other groups in the neighborhood as part of that grant bill. But I will just say we could have done more, should have done more to make it clear what this was, and avoid the situation of, oh, the city's doing this and just getting more money for this, that, and the other thing, where to be clear, we're getting money to build out projects that already had community support behind it. And for instance, like the Fed Bridge, the question we get the most is, why isn't it built yet? And people are like, you committed to this, like, show us where the Fed Bridge is, we need this connectivity piece. So from our perspective, it was almost like an internal kind of funding decision, and less so, you know, a robust community engagement process of what do you guys want to see? How do you want to spend this money? It wasn't really that level of conversation. We took it as an opportunity to fund things we already knew the community supported and was behind previously, if that makes sense. So October to February, the Department of Transportation was reviewing the grant. There was a lot of grant advocacy that happened with our congressional delegation. So DeGette, Hickenlooper both came out and toured the site. A lot of advocacy goes on back in Washington by our Congress people to help make the case that this is worth investing in. And ultimately, we were successful. In March, we were awarded the grant. There have been a couple high-profile tours after that grant was awarded. So the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, who's Kamala Harris's husband, was out, as well as the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs from the White House, and most recently, the Department of Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, was out last week. Those were, let's call them sort of media events as much as anything that the administration was using to highlight the investment that they're making through the IIJA in communities like Louisville and Elyria, Swansea. And we were happy to host, but honestly, kind of along for the ride and doing what they needed to do and being the local partner. In April, we have the US DOT visit, and we are actively working on a public information plan associated with this. In May and moving forward, we need to finalize the grant agreement with the feds, which is not a small process in itself. Finish and implement the public information plan that we're putting together right now. So there'll be a lot more information as this develops, timelines on these projects, what is it going to be, when's it going to happen, how that starts to layer in with the broader effort that Dottie and OCDE are doing with the Washington area projects. There's a lot of work happening in these neighborhoods, and we as the city are working to have a coordinated communication plan and construction coordination between all these projects to minimize the impacts on Louisville and Elyria, Swansea. Is that my last slide? That's my last slide. So I'll stop and let people ask questions. There may be things I didn't address or anything anyone else wants to know about the grant.
So,
I do. First of all, none of us on Zoom could see any of the slides that you just presented. And there were several requests for that to happen. So, can the slides be shared after the meeting with us? I mean, I know technical glitches, but we were like,
Yes, we will most definitely share the presentation with the whole group after
after the meeting. My apologies, I'm having major technical difficulties and typically we have two laptops running this meeting, Anthony's laptop and my laptop. Tonight it's just me, so bear with me.
Okay, and then I
Bring it
guess
in.
while I'm complaining, can I just continue on complaining? So Mike, thank you so much for that and a slight bit more of clarification. So my question, was, I'm looking at the, news release that happened. And it says, working closely with the National Western Center, improvements made through this grant funded project. Yada, yada, this project will facilitate access to critical services, including childcare, schools, and fresh grocery options. So my question is, will community be allowed to have input into those things that were specifically put into this press release? Thank you.
Yes, no, great question. So the press release is really talking about the ultimate benefits that come from implementing these infrastructure projects that are part of this grant. So, and I think that's part of the confusion about how many dollars are going directly to these uses. And to be clear, these dollars are going to these 4 construction projects that will then set up in the future, the ability for those additional uses, potentially on a site like the DPS bus barn, but certainly as part of future phases in the redevelopment. Those will all be critical aspects that will be part of robust community engagement effort associated with that will start later this year. Does that help?
Yes, and just one last thing before, and then I promise I'll try to be quiet, Catherine. I'll try. You know me better than that, but I'll try.
You're fine, Angela.
But the other thing is like there was, as you said, a lot of confusion in the community. I actually had some business owners contact me and say, hey, how do we get some of that money? And I was like, oh no, that's not for you. This is what it's going to do. And they're like, oh, well, that was not my understanding. And I said, I know. And like eventually engagement will come along, but this is what I'm telling you. If you have any further questions, you need to reach out to the councilman, to the mayor's office, because I'm just a volunteer with a big mouth. So thank you.
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And we definitely, in hindsight, can see the confusion between how the grant was communicated back in the fall, coupled with the press release. So yes, we are actively working to rectify that.
Other comments or questions?
I have a quick question about it.
Sure.
My question is very specific to the pedestrian bridge.
Yes.
To project number 2. I'm curious on how the proposed Colorado legislation on rail safety impacts that. From my understanding, it's there's a lot of regulations in that, but one of those is for BNSF and Union Pacific to help maintain the rail lines. I think it's 2 to 3 feet or so beyond the rail tracks. And I'm just curious on how that might impact the pedestrian bridge with the construction and everything going on there.
I will say I don't know the specifics of that.
Sure.
I do know in general that our team does not think there are any impacts.
Okay.
In addition to there's a lot of regulations that are which working in and around rail to begin with. And so the agreements that we'll have in place there's 3 different railroad entities that we're working with, BN, RTD, and DRIR. So there's a lot of work that's already been done to coordinate all that.
Okay.
So to my knowledge, there's nothing new in this that would add anything additional.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is about the 1% art. So I know that the Betty Cram Bridge already went through a art selection process, I believe.
Yep.
So would these dollars also help pay for that so that could happen?
Yes. So, well, let me clarify. Or you want to pick that first? You're listed. Were you going to say that federal dollars don't include 1%?
No.
No, because typically they don't. So we as the city are then responsible for that portion. As a campus, including the Betty Graham Drive Bridge and the pedestrian bridge, we have an overarching public art process that addressed all the improvements we were making. So that includes the art that's currently on 51st Avenue Bridge, the art that's going in at Riverfront, the art that will go in the plaza, and the art that will go with Betty Graham Bridge. So we are still committed and we will make sure that that art is fully funded as part of the build up of that bridge, because that's the commitment that we made to the community originally.
Okay.
additional for like 48th Avenue Greenway, that I don't know, and that's a question we'll take up with Dottie, because we work through the details.
Okay, awesome.
Question?
What you laid out here adds up to the federal grant, so what's the city money funding?
Oh, no. So, the federal grants typically require a local match. So they're never gonna give you all the money to do your whole project. Anywhere from a minimum typically 20% to, in this case, they wanted to see something closer to 50%. So the 68 million is the total project cost. And I didn't put, so the numbers in orange are the amounts of the 35.4 that are going to each of those. There's a corollary amount that would be in blue. That's the remainder that the city is funding. So if you do the math, it's 32.7 million that the city is bringing to fund the rest of the projects total. So I will add that for clarity. Harmony answers it.
I just want to ask, thank you, Harmony, just one moment. Can you see the screens now? I'm just wondering. Angela, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so Harmony, you had a question?
I have a few questions. First is, where does the city funding come from? Like what revenue source?
Sure, it's a variety. So for the projects that are already part of the National Western Center phases 1 and 2, it's the funding, the $800 million funding that is building out phases 1 and 2, which is primarily the 2C lodgers tax. So that accounts for the Betty Cram Drive Bridge and the pedestrian bridge. The rail crossing will be a combination of those dollars, potentially and some other Dottie funds. The 48th Avenue Greenway, I would defer to Beth if you know the funding streams there.
Mix.
I think it's a mix, and that would be Dottie. I think there's some wastewater, stormwater, enterprise fund. And then the bus barn is coming from DDPHE and funding streams there. So happy to go back and get more specific information and give you a better breakdown of where those dollars are coming from. But essentially, they're city dollars from a variety of different sources that were already being essentially built up to fund these. And the federal dollars allow us to do that sooner, as I mentioned.
Perfect. And then my follow-up question, and we're just seeing the slides now, but it's a little bit hard to visualize what this actually feels like in real life, given what's in front of our screens. Is there going to be an opportunity to maybe do a community tour similar like was given to press and hire people who don't live here on a regular basis, but the people who actually live in the community? Because when I'm looking at this, it feels like this bridge goes to from the back of what do they call that, where you put old vehicles, what is that term? Yeah, a junkyard and a bunch of other industrial areas behind Compost, Colorado, and into the CSU spur. And in all the years I've been doing engagement in community, specifically, there's some people on Dottie that I did community engagement on with the needs of community. No one has ever asked to walk from that area to that area. And with all the other needs that we're highlighting, and maybe I'm just not picturing it correctly what this looks like in real life. So wondering if there could be an opportunity for a live tour with community members.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. We would love to host that. I will say that connection has long been a part of the National Western Center campus plan because that connects over to Washington. It provides bike and ped connectivity too, as well as vehicular. And then ultimately on the other end where the rail is, and I'm pointing at the screen, you can't see it, the Marion underpass that will go under the rail and connect over across the tracks to the triangle will provide connectivity from Globeville all the way through to Elyria, Swansea with bike and peds without having to go up and over the elevator of the ped bridge. So it's a really important community connection that's long been part of not only the campus master plan, but I believe part of the Globeville plan prior.
The Globeville neighborhood plan, which was adopted in 2014, started in 2012, started that. And then the National Western Center Master Plan was more of an implementation plan to pick up those connections and really locate them exactly
at 51st and 48th. The Elyria Swansea Neighborhood Plan also adopted prior to the National Western Center Master Plan called for these connections to the river and from Elyria into Gloveville. So, you know, that was like a decade ago, like 12 years ago, when those ideas really started coming up in the community, and takes time.
And I'll just say, because I run a community space right across the street from a $13 million bridge that was built by Dottie, in which 80% of the residents use a hole cut in the fence and cross across the railroad tracks anyway. I just think just because we have this plan, it doesn't mean it's what the people want or are going to use. And does it make sense to ask those questions before we invest now $70 million into things? Who are they actually for? Will they actually be used as intended? Because we have seen from past projects, because it has not gone as intended. And then I'm sorry, did you say that this bridge will have an elevator?
So the pedestrian bridge, number 2 on this, will have elevators on both sides, correct?
And then I'll just highlight, we would love to have seen an elevator in the bridge of Elyria with a bunch of community members who have disabilities. We walk with children, we're older, things like that. And so just highlighting, again, wish we could have got one of those.
Understood.
Other comments or questions? Are you seeing any, Jenna, on your screen?
I have a quick follow-up question on that, just regarding the elevator. Will the National Western Center continue to maintain the infrastructure improvements then? Like, who will maintain the bridge and who will maintain the elevator there? I'm just curious because, you know, there are a lot of situations where a lot of RTD bridges and RTD elevators have issues, so.
Yes, so we are working through specific details, but there is a joint shared responsibility for maintenance and operations between the city and the authority.
Okay.
So specifically, the city is primarily responsible for structural maintenance. We're working through the details on the elevators in particular. But certainly we understand, and I think RTD is a great example. If you don't have the long-term investment in maintenance and operations, then yes. So yes, it's at the top of our list of conversations we're having.
Yeah, having the mechanism in place of the authority is really kind of like a district, a maintenance district. So, you know, we're an entity that can maintain the elevator. Sure.
Can and will.
We have to. It's a must. Yes.
Okay, Harmony, did you have another question, or your hand is just still raised?
I have a question if Harmony doesn't have one, or I guess more of I had mentioned it a little bit earlier today at a partner meeting, and now that we're in front of different partners, I wanna just bring it to the forefront. I really hear the intentionality of like bringing in community. Harmony made some good points about, well, we're talking about a plan that is you know, a decade old, so we're hearing those community needs. Right now, as a neighborhood representative, I hear all these questions all the time about who is this for? What's it actually? Why now? Why this? Why now? You know, Washington, etc. I really think that we should really reconsider how we're going forward, including community in the planning piece. I know it's so much easier to say, and then we'll do info sessions afterwards, but I think this community is kind of like projected out. You know, Harmony's talking about those funds. Every neighbor I've talked to has said, sorry, we don't have rec center hours anymore. Our library has been cut. Our daily city services have been cut. And now the city can match $35 million. It's a really daunting, big number to work through with neighbors, just as neighbors, or as a community partner. And then when the administration is saying, hey, you know, we're all a team here. Let's make sure to go forward as a community. And then there's a kind of a press tour that happens where more neighbors then come up to me and go, sorry, a senator was here, or the second, you know, where were we? Are we not allowed to be asked questions? So I think for this project, it's a little too late. And you know, congrats, you guys got the funding, but especially thinking about the equestrian center, the parking garage, these areas, we really have to get ahead of at least finding ways to say, hey, this is how we communicated to neighbors, so that I'm more informed, so that I'm more, you know, I understand that it's part of your jobs as well, but if I'm not even getting the info and I go to the CAC meetings, like, for them to call me and go, sorry, Anna, you never let us know. And I didn't know about this like letter that was submitted. I know that we're always working through with Anthony on how like emails come out or how things go through. So I am a little curious about where in the CAC process we all got flagged like, hey, we're gonna say this is a community benefit. Community is therefore gonna have a lot of questions. What have we checked in with the community about? So I know it sounds scary. I am being direct, but I'm like really kind of like straddling, you know what I mean? A lot of phone calls here. And I want to give you guys space to have your community process, but I really think similar to how we did these other community meetings, like, let's have a conversation. Hey, we're about to have these community meetings. What does it look like? Okay, we don't have a neighbor in the room right now, but what have we done in the past that worked, that didn't, as a collective? And that way, at least in the CAC recording, I can grab that recording, send it to neighbors and say, see, this is where we had that opportunity to talk about it here. I don't necessarily think that's enough, but it's a big start and it really covers where that access point is. So I just really want to be transparent. It's been really hard to filter this and to tout it as ultimately a community benefit, long time coming, but it's balancing those comments that Harmony and Angela have made. It's just not resonating right now the way it should have. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions. I can't really sleep knowing I felt that way and I have you all here. I see that there's others here, but I really want to like call this out as it's not matching the narrative right now. Like the community needs to feel it's for them if we're saying it is a community benefit somehow.
Thank you, Anna.
Sure.
AE, I see your hand is raised and then Angela would like to speak after you. Go ahead, AE. You're still on mute.
Now, can you hear me? Okay, great. You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm a beat behind. I just got out of another meeting. I want to just take one little step back and respond to the situation with the safety bridge. I think it's a little bit different in response to your comments, Heather, than the grant that Mike is reporting on. I fully endorse that the process needs to be better along the lines of what Anna's saying, and thank you for acknowledging that, Mike, with the community grant. But I do want to say regarding that safety bridge, which I know is not strictly a National Western Center influenced project, there was a very rigorous engagement over several years. Over 200 neighbors, many of whom were parents and teachers organized there at Swansea Elementary, signed a petition wanting that bridge, and it moved it to the very first priority with the GO bond coming through. It was a successful community engagement. There were very arduously discussed engineering problems regarding how long the ramp had to be to meet the engineering requirements for the I don't know what you call it, the slant, the angle that it goes up. There was a very, very arduous discussion regarding the economy and the realities of the elevators. That building that you're in, Heather, which I, along with many people, appreciate you being there and doing what you're doing, was very, very emotionally saved by all of the people in the neighborhoods, because there were participating. It was the consensus was save that building. It could be a gathering place, because one option was to put the footprint there. There were several of the bridge. So I think that the problems with that bridge and usage are a contemporary follow-through set of problems that haven't been addressed, and they do need to be. I'm very concerned about what is being said about what's going on with the hole in the fence and everything. But I think we need to recognize the full history of the processes in some of these things, while we also recognize the dilemmas of the engagements in projects that are coming in now, really needing to be remedied. And I do think that there are some issues with that bridge that are really important and are distracting from its value to the neighborhoods. So I wanted to bring that forward. It was really extraordinary how the parents, just out of respect for who was engaged with that, rallied with the process that the city went through where there were many work sessions and public meetings and participation with the committees that met, specialized thematic committees, and with the city council and that sort of thing. And there are problems with that bridge that do need to be addressed. And I would like to definitely have those spotlighted while we resolve the related but different problem of how do we go forward with remedying what happened under the pressure of getting this community grant in with a flawed engagement process.
Thank
Thanks.
you, AE. Angela, and then the final question from Fernando. Angela, go ahead.
Thank you. AE, I love that you said a flawed, what did you say? A flawed community engagement. That's exactly what happened. And I support fully Anna and Harmony and AE when we talk about being in community. It's difficult for us. We're put in difficult situations because the community knows that we're involved in these processes. And they come to us and they ask us questions. And when we don't know the proper answers, or we know the answer, we're also talking to a community that has historically, as it has said in the news, in the media, Facebook, etc., has been historically overlooked and ignored. And that's how they're still feeling, because they were not given any notice of this. And, the pictures of various dignitaries at Garden Place Academy, and Argo Park and Lorraine Granado Park. It's nice to see those, but I'm like, I scan them and I'm like, I don't see my neighbors there. And that's the issue, is people don't feel that they're being heard, they're being acknowledged, and it puts those of us who actually live in this community every single day. We don't drive in and then go home at night. We actually live here. We have to hear the sounds, smell the smells, etc. And it puts us in difficult situations with our own neighbors, because I don't want my neighbors to think that I'm the sellout, that I'm all over with the National Western and the city. Those of you who know me know who I am and what I say. It's just very difficult for those of us who are here. And so I'm also hoping that as we move forward, there will be better community engagement. And I understand that we don't like to go to meetings. I get that. But also you have to understand that meetings are held at dinner time for people. And, there's a tired mama coming home from work making dinner for her 3-year-old or her 93-year-old parent or grandparent. There are people who are going to their night job, and maybe it's their second job. So community engagement is always going to be difficult, but there are ways to do it. You have CREA. They can go door to door and talk to people. You have Sandra and Caroline. There are community representatives. CREA and Sandra and Caroline can have office hours at the rec centers, the Prodigy coffee houses, the restaurants, etc., that are within the community, to give the community the information, instead of having myself, Anna, Harmony, AE, and others be the conduit for that. Because you know what? I don't get paid. I'm a volunteer doing this, and I do it because I love my community. But I also don't want to be the one providing that information all the time, because that's not my job. I'm done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Final comment, Fernando?
Thank you. I think I just wanted to support what inspired AE that just said, and also Angela, because I think sometimes we dream something and we want something, and when it's finally done, it doesn't look exactly how we wanted it. But I do appreciate so much AE bringing back again what it was, a historical situation. And Angela mentioned the park that calls for Lorraine Granado, which I had the privilege to work with her at Cross Community Coalition. And I was right there. And this was one of the major successes that she and the community and many other groups and people wanted it. It was not so good times 20 years ago, where sometimes the train will stop and sometimes for an hour, right? And the kids and people have to jump in between and under the train. And everybody just heard the tack, 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 and everybody was just run, right? And there was so much advocacy. And there's a reality. Nobody wanted to do it. It was expensive. It was a difficult engineering piece. It will have to take on some land and issues. But at the time, people saw it as another divider of the community, including I-70 and everything. So I appreciate a lot AE bringing about the issue that maybe it's not a popular thing now and people don't like it, but it was then something that it took years and years of advocacy to finally see it completed. And again, I cannot speak on behalf of my friend and mentor is no longer with us, but she said many times that that was an incredible success, that the community was able to advocate and actually saw it to fruition. And again, as Angela said, we are available to continue to spread the message. We're always cautious and fearful, as what she says, like, right, when you say something is good and people think it's not, think like, oh, you're a sellout because you're working with the campaign and the enterprise or the people who's doing or trying to do, but we don't fear the communication nor the conflict. So if there's anything that we could be of service to continue to advocate and bring voice to issues, if there are people like something and we want people to know more about it, or even again set up the conversation so people can learn about the historical components that sometimes we don't know, right? Because I was there, but I didn't know what happened in other parts of the city. So thank you both for bringing it about, and that was just my. I think it was again, it looks big, but people will want it is to be able to cross safe at times where it was one of the biggest issues that on the many issues that the community have been able to work with, and some are still not resolved. That was one that the community engaged at that moment wanted it. Was everybody on board at the time? Probably not, but strong voices were able to make it happen.
Thank you, Fernando. Just as in summary, I think the things that we talked about was providing the slides to CAC, a list of the funding sources, looking at community engagement that would include a tour with community, and also that would be a briefing, a more in-depth briefing about the grant. Did I capture everything?
And I can update the slide deck with the breakdown so that we're only sending one thing out and not a follow-up. If that's okay.
I can also post that to the website for anyone who isn't on our CAC distribution list, in case, Anna, to your point, I know you guys are in community a lot and having people ask you for resources. Everything related to CAC, including recordings in English and in Spanish, are on our website. I'll make sure this presentation and others get uploaded as well, just so we can point people in that direction. That's another resource.
I have one more action item that I think is important, is who is the anticipated users of these different projects?
Thank you, Harmony. We'll include that perhaps in the briefing.
And I just want to say the bridge is so important across from where I are, because no child should have to crawl through an oil train to get to school, or no one should have to do that. But there are a lot of issues of why it's not being used. And again, it's to not repeat those same mistakes again.
Thank you, Harmony. So let's move on in our agenda. Let's move to Beth. Beth is going to talk about the GES program of projects. Beth has lost her voice, so we're going to try to.
I'm going to come up here because I need to point to the map, okay?
Okay, and let's just be sure that the folks on Zoom can see the map. Anthony, can you see the map?
Yes, we can see the map.
Thank you.
Did I hit a button?
It'll follow your voice, you don't need to turn it.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my best, okay?
Beth,
I've
will you
been-
reintroduce yourself?
Yes, okay, so, my name's Beth. So following me. Can you guys hear me, even though my voice is kind of bad?
Beth, you have to actually face the eyes towards each other. That's how they communicate in sync.
Oh, so if you turn the eyes towards each other.
Yeah, perfect.
There
All right.
Got it.
And then it'll follow you around.
You're close enough, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna get through this, okay.
We're to move it closer to the voice, I did not know they synced.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Okay. So, again, my name is Beth Vogelsang, and I have a company called OV Consulting, and we've been in Denver for 23 years. And we have been working in this neighborhood since the end of Steve's Globeville neighborhood plan. So literally 10 years now. Oh my gosh, it didn't occur to me till you mentioned that. And so I can address a lot about this history that you're wondering about and why are we doing these projects? And they come from some very distinct phases of planning and then design, and then now what we're getting into is construction. So there is a long history to all of these projects, and I can always come up and address some of those, but I'll try to kind of set it up in that way. So what I was going to share with you tonight is what's happening primarily in Globeville, although this is encompassing both Globeville and Elyria Swansea, and the York Josephine corridor study that's underway right now is specifically Elyria Swansea. And we are hoping that there will be more specifically in that part of the neighborhood as well as we go forward. So I'm going to start at the top. It's a little tricky to see. There are a few roadway connections that are going in at 58th, 54th, that you kind of almost can't see up there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and these will be reconstruction of some of these streets. And these are currently in design and will be moving into construction. They shouldn't be terribly impactful to you. They are just literally some roadway improvements, okay? But as we get down into this area here, we start to talk about Heron Pond and Carpios and Gwinnett Park. And this has been a multi-phase process. Some of the first phases are done where the stormwater pipe is in 51st. The whole intent behind that park is not only to create a beautiful place for people, but also to manage the flooding that comes across this area and to capture that and move it to the outlet of the river. So this is a very functional piece of the picture as well as a future park. And that is well underway. 51st and Washington, I'm sure you've heard of these projects. Those two are working in tandem, and they are a reconfiguration of both the streets, and they are at 100% design. The meeting tomorrow night is to share the images of that 100% design, and that process started with the 2018 Washington study. And in that study, community members, many of whom I recognize, but many of whom are different, all wanted Washington Street to not become a four-lane major arterial. They wanted to shrink it. They wanted to slow traffic, and they wanted to create a Main Street feel. So you'll see in the final design that the recommendations and the final design reflect a wide pedestrian space, an amenity zone, water quality improvements, and drainage improvements that help water roll toward the park and the outfall. So that's what you'll see in that piece of the picture. We're going to talk about the construction schedule next. Okay, so we'll just go through a few. I want to call your attention to the Greenway. This is that 48th Avenue Greenway. It extends from Lincoln Street through Argo Park, where we had some detention to manage some of that stormwater flow, through into a pipe and an open greenway, all the way to a new outfall to the river. This project came specifically out of the Globeville stormwater study, and most all of these we worked on, so I can talk to that if you need me to. But it recommended that all this water that's coming and flooding the Globeville area be better captured and build the pipe and be managed through detention in the park so that the homes are not flooding, that we move that water and get it moving toward the river where it needs to go. Right now, because of the topography, that water all just sits in that neighborhood. So this first phase from the river to Washington Street and the crossing at Washington is what is going to be included in the first phase of construction. And that design is also at 100, just about 100%. From there, I want to just talk to the levee. Probably have also heard that there's a big levee project underway. It has multiple stages and phases. It runs all the way from Heron Pond, where it has already been completed, through the center of Globeville, south of I-70, and then this last piece is called phase 3. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is designed to elevate the levee to meet the new requirements for flooding and to be certified so that all of Globeville is not put into a floodplain and required to carry flood insurance. So that's the intent behind it. And in the redo and the elevation of this levee, we will redo the entire regional trail. So there'll be a much improved regional crusher fine and hard surface trail that goes all along the top of the levee. All of that will also start happening soon, which we'll talk about. This final phase of the levee is a little further out. It involves a big wall as part of the design right now. And of course, Rhino isn't really crazy about that, and we hear about it all the time. But we haven't gotten to, not there yet. So right now, the design team is really focused on the section through Globeville, which is like an earthen berm, right? Just similar to what it is now. Not, a big wall for a long way. So these conversations will come. As also as part of this, I'm just gonna call your attention to the water project. If you guys are familiar, we also received a lot of money from the feds to look at the South Platte River and address our habitat improvements and flow of water through the river. That will be happening in conjunction with this other levee work and that work that's underway, and that will also be next year. There's some smaller ones, but they're very cool. And these, all of these are designed to meet either something that was called out in the stormwater study, something that was called out in the connectivity study, which looked at all the new connections through all of this area that are needed, or are part of this efforts. So Lincoln underpass improvements are lighting and pedestrian safety. This little green park right here is Park's acquisition of the old tiny home site, plus the one next to it to create a new future park. It's not happening yet, but it's coming, and they've already purchased it. We'll talk about 44th and Broadway. Let's just see if there's any others that we haven't quite hit on. And then, of course, you just heard about future Betty Graham and a couple of the others there. So this is a huge package of improvements, and every single one of these amounts to over $600 million in investment in this area. And every single one of these projects came from a previous plan or study over the last decade, it's a long time, that identified needs with the community and then identified projects to address those needs, and then moved into design of those projects and is now ready for construction. And unfortunately, it's about what it takes. It's about a decade to get all of that done. So that's part of the reason that the communication effort around what's coming is so critical, is because many of the folks who are now receiving the construction project don't even know why we were doing that to begin with. So maybe making that tie back is part of this next communication move. So let's just go to the next.
Do you want to add, anybody have, maybe we
Oh,
can ask,
yeah.
Anybody have questions on this particular set of projects?
I don't have a quick question, but I'm just wondering about this, image, if it's online on this, on the Denver Gov site anywhere where we can find it.
I can definitely get it to Jenna, and this, a version of this is on the Globeville Leary Swansea Program of Projects website. It's slightly different. We have many versions of this, but it still highlights.
And then under the Dottie.
Yeah,
And
it's under
website.
that.
For those of you, I did post in the Zoom chat the link to that GES improvement map, as well as the GES Program of Projects page on denvergov.org. So for in-person folks, if you want to access that, feel free to check the Zoom chat, or you can always reach out to Beth and I.
It's under the Dottie website. That's the sort of the
This is the home of Dottie, all of this.
It's all Dottie.
Yeah.
Fernando, do you still have your hand up or did you have a new question? All right.
He is from before.
I'm from before, okay. All right, any,
Okay, so the next really important thing for you to know is that, like I said, many of these projects were planned for years and years ago. Then they spent the last 2 to 4 years in design and funding, which always takes time, and they are now poised for construction. So this gets to our communication conversation. It is going to be super critical that we, meaning Dottie, National Western, that we all work together to really have a strong and transparent education program. So much is going to start happening. And you might be, in your neighborhood, you might not realize there's a plan going on, but you're gonna realize. So the red or orange or whatever color this is, this just highlights the things that are going to start this year, okay? And there is a water line apparently down the middle of Washington Street that has to be replaced before the rest of the Washington Street construction starts. And that is happening this summer. It's short. They're gonna work at night. They're going to minimize the impacts. And they're gonna keep the road open. And for water. But they will be out there for a couple months this summer, getting that done. And then, like I said, Heron Pond has some additional phases coming in. I-70 underpass, the pedestrian improvements should be coming. Stock show, headquarter building and livestock center, which I won't speak to, but generally speaking, will kick off this year. The levee starts in the fall, in October, because that's low water season in the river. So they have to work when the water is low in the river. So they'll be out there starting some of that work. This little Franklin Bridge is just a bridge improvement. I don't think anyone will really even notice it's happening. That'll happen. And 58th Avenue up to the north. So those things will all start kicking in this year. But then as we go forward, the Washington Street project, that's at final 100% design, will eventually hire a contractor over this year, finish up all their right-of-way requirements, and they will be ready in 2025 to start construction. So right now, we don't know the schedule for that because it doesn't really exist yet. Figuring out, do we start on the north? Do we start on the south? How do we manage the street? So all those kinds of details will be super critical to this communication strategy because that's what you will see and experience. So some of these others will kick in, and then these in green are really more of a 2026 sort of look ahead. They'll take, like Betty Cram Bridge, even though the funding is now secured, it will still take time to finish the design, get a contractor, tie it in with the Greenway, that it won't happen next year. So that's the idea. Does anybody have, okay, we'll come back. So I just want to show this as an example. So again, communication going forward, and I think you guys have to help us be successful in this communication, right? Because it's going to be complicated and we need to be coordinated. This is an example, 44th and Broadway. It's right near Prodigy Coffee, right off of 45th, right there. And this is underway. They are building the improved sidewalks over the bridge of I-25, over the down to 45th. The new ADA ramp will be in, and a whole new set of really nice stairs where they used to just have that trail. All of those ideas came from the 41st and Fox Next Step study, and they were great ideas, but it took probably 6 years ago or something. Anyway, long time, finally got funded, and it's now in construction. So while this is fabulous and very much needed as a connection to Fox area, it also has impacts, say, on Prodigy and on 45th. And so what we have to work on, it's a great case study. We've been talking with Prodigy a lot, but we have to work on how do we minimize these types of impacts to local businesses? And nobody wants to put Prodigy Coffee out of business. That is like one of our premier businesses. It's great, but the construction crew might not have necessarily appreciated the value of that. So it's a communication, not just with the community and the property owners, but also with the Dottie contractors. The whole gamut has to be involved. So that's the kind of thing we're gonna have to work on as we make our way through the rest of these projects.
Comments, suggestions, ideas?
I would just really quickly second that whole Prodigy case study thing because they are going through it right now. Because of that construction, because of all those impacts that they're having there.
Oh,
So I would
mhm.
just try to advocate for that. Keep that in mind.
The only good news I have is that I was told by the construction team that the road is opening Friday.
Oh, that's good.
So that's fabulous. But I totally agree. And I think it's just gonna take a more concerted effort. Yeah. Mhm.
Angela, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Beth, and I also want to thank Chris because I have contacted them so much over the past few weeks, talking not only about Prodigy, I'm a proud board member, but also Emmanuel's Bakery. So if any of you are ever coming down 45th, please stop at Emmanuel's Bakery. It is literally Daniel and Julia's bread and butter. They've been in the community for decades. I bought my house 31 years ago. They were already here. They are suffering really hard from the lack of traffic that is going down 45th. And when I see somebody who's almost in tears talking about it, it makes me angry. So, yeah, so thank you, Beth, for acknowledging that there needs to be a little bit better outreach, much better outreach to community, and also to let people know that the businesses that are on the impacted streets are open and can still be accessed. Thank you.
Beth, is the communication strategy gonna be coming through the CAC? Or the CAG, the CAG with Chris and you're out of Dottie's?
Yeah, for sure. We will. So each project will also have a communications person for the day-to-day, what's happening. But the overall strategy about how are we going to keep people informed and are we paying attention will have to come through OCBE, through the CAG. And I think, in coordination here as well. I mean, I think, well, I won't comment, but we don't want to work in silos. We should kind of all work together because what's coming is going to affect everybody and it needs to be coordinated among everybody.
Chris, do you want to comment again? Maybe reiterate your meeting tomorrow night?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think like Beth said, this is undoubtedly gonna come with a little bit of kind of disruption to the normal way that folks transit along the corridor within the neighborhood. And we're very aware of that, and we have been and will continue kind of coordinating with all of our internal kind of city and county of Denver partners, but really thinking about that proactive communication with folks who are kind of immediately adjacent and who will feel some of the more harsh sides of the disruption. I think with 44th and Broadway specifically, we're definitely in open communication with our partners at the Department of Economic Development and Opportunity to kind of raise awareness around the need for grants and different resources to offset the impacts of construction, and definitely have felt that with this project. And we'll continue to do that in partnership with them. Unfortunately, there have not been kind of funds available for this project. But we'll be kind of aligning all of that communication for this kind of larger program of projects. I will say too, that a lot of that strategy is really starting to develop. So there will be more to come on that, but know that folks are thinking about it, talking about it, and planning around it, all the way from project teams up to kind of the engagement level and the administration within the department. So.
Angela, did you have another comment?
I did, thank you. And I just think that this is also just a learning lesson for when things start happening on Washington Street. I was at Casa Don Juan today, and he very anxiously said, "When is this going to start?" I said, "I don't know. But when I find out, I'll let you know, or somebody else will come and let you know." I know that Beth and Chris have been in communication with them, and I know that things take a long time, but you know, when you're a business owner and that is literally your bread and butter, you get anxious. So yeah, I just think, again, this is just a better understanding to see how impactful this is to small businesses that are in community. Thank you.
And I will say,
Thank you.
just really appreciate your kind of advocacy there, and like kind of continuously like raising awareness and flagging those concerns, and also kind of working through different options that, you know, whether or not economic development and opportunity has these grant resources. We certainly got folks out to the site and kind of looked at what can be changed in the construction site to hopefully ease some of that impact. Didn't, I don't think, resolve all of it, but we're getting creative, and we're definitely interested in making sure that we're exploring all options on the table.
I have a quick question, just kind of about the holistic picture, including, I know there's some of the business owners here as well. I find a lot of times when I talk to the upcoming developments, there's Blue Line, there's 4995 Washington, it feels like the actual businesses themselves are a little bit separated in the sense of like, these amenities are coming in, and we can get an update on that, but do we actually know what businesses are coming in? Who's staying around? You know, I know that Guzman's is leaving, but I only know that internally. I don't know if that gets updated like at these meetings or those kinds of things. You know, I'm really curious about, is it on the onus of the business owners, of the developers to get connected and kind of make proposals to this project like that? I know that we're like at 100% design in this sense, but I feel in that sense a little bit kind of, I think there's a gap as well where it's kind of difficult to design this, like you said, Main Street feel when we may be designing this and then where Metal Movers is, a non-community serving something goes up that a luxury retailer that we can't afford anyway, a Lululemon per se. Like, okay, well, so we did all of this so that Lululemon can move in, like, I'm really kind of with that business owner and partners, you know, Project Angel Heart is right in the middle there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's you, Beth, for the point person, or if you have any answers about that.
Yeah, well, so you can't necessarily regulate who wants to come and, you know, buy out a property and put in a new business. You know, that's, there is zoning in place. There is an emphasis on affordable housing and other local services. There's definitely an understanding on the part of the property owners along Washington, who we have worked with hand in hand about forming a maintenance district to help make sure it stays nice once it's in. But it's pretty hard to tell them what, outside of the zoning, what they're allowed to do, to tell them what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
But things like a maintenance district is a great organizational platform for what's happening. You know, what property owners are changing, who's selling, who might be buying and coming in.
Do you currently have, before the maintenance district exists, do you currently have information for like who's coming in, who's leaving, who's changing and whatnot, or?
We only have who is selling or who sold.
Okay.
You know, and who they sold to, not, you know, necessarily what their plans are.
Right.
Yeah, and right now I feel like planning piece of it in terms of businesses is it's almost like there's a waiting. They're waiting to get the improvements in and waiting to get some of this investment made. And so they're not, too active right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to second comments there. I think that that's a very great point. You know, a lot of I'm the executive director of the Denver North Business Association, and so many times I find that businesses come to us and say, hey, what's happening right here? You know, there's such a separation of information, and it's not necessarily typically on the city to provide that information. I think, it's good for, if you're an RNO, you kind of automatically get that information from the different developers, from them coming in and doing a lot of outreach and stuff. But the business owners themselves, they're almost siloed in that aspect, you know, and so I don't necessarily have the answer myself to how to fix that, and let them know, that could be a new communication strategy, something like that. But just wanted to echo those comments that, there is a separation there that the communication should happen.
Yeah.
But also, good luck with the maintenance district, because that is not easy and it is very expensive.
Well, actually, I'm just gonna make my last comment that the city is Dottie and other departments within it are really contributing to the operation of this maintenance district, so that things like the green infrastructure, replacement costs, replacing trees or plants that die, other aspects that would normally fall to a maintenance district is all being covered by the city. So this is like a first that they are really carrying a lot of that cost, so that the charge ultimately to each of the property owners is minimal in comparison to some other parts of the city. And that's been intentional, and that's been on their part to say, we're gonna cover that and do it. And the new sidewalk program will also cover the replacement of sidewalks and things. So really the maintenance cost associated with the district and all the property owners is about cleaning up. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah, and there's a pretty high percentage agreement right now among the property owners to do it. So that's where it stands. Don't know any more than that, but that's where it stands.
AE, last comment before we move on to Steve.
I just want to bring forward of a value system of from the long process of discussing the design of Washington Street when the Land Institute was involved in various considerations were to encourage it to be neighborhood friendly. So a couple things that were structured, and just as examples, were the way that the parking invited people to turn out and stop going, instead of just driving straight through the corridor. There were conversations about walkability. There was resistance to calling Washington Street Main Street, because East 45th Avenue is the historic Main Street. There was acknowledgement of the business economy within the neighborhood and all throughout the full terrain of the neighborhood. And coming forward from some of those discussions, and this is a long process and people come in and out, and this is part of the problem, is not carrying forward some of the real values that address the absolutely legitimate concerns around engagement and neighborhood relevance that we're talking about. But one of the obligations to me of the city administrations is to do for neighborhoods what they'll do if they're trying to attract big, powerful commercial interests to come in and get busy downtown. There are ways a city can help developers understand the neighborhood nature and the neighborhood spirit. And there have been efforts in these discussions over the years trying to get an awareness. And I think that, of how do you communicate your offerings to attract the types of businesses that will strengthen the neighborhoods and create the kind of economy that where it's mutually beneficial in the way that neighborhoods can be. So anyway, I just want to say there's a whole lot that needs to be brought forward, somehow some kind of a continuity of these values that are structured to a degree inside the design that are a little bit different than maintenance. Maintenance is great, but there are things that are part of the values that the neighbors over the years that have been involved, residents and family-owned and smaller businesses and some of the big businesses in the GES neighborhoods, these can set precedent for who is attracted. We can take some inspiration for the actions that limited, and one very key limitation, the recreational marijuana coming in, one near 48th and Washington. This was an assertion based largely on the neighborhood plan that successfully stopped that moment of proliferation. The same kind of nascent waiting to come through again force is out here. There are conversations. I just want to quickly say also to kind of put a full context on the safety bridge across York. There are conversations percolating about costing retrofitting, and there's a couple really good streets blogs, articles on the GeoBond discussions I think can be brought forward around how that bridge was just one step in a whole ecosystem of connectivity. And we're coming into the arena now where usage in all of these areas, including the bridge, is partly dependent on what is being presented now that Beth is talking about, this full network of bringing these things forward. And how do we help us understand the full accessibility that the fully completed network that's taken zillions of years to get here is going to provide? And how do we talk about things that, and by the way, that York Street Bridge was very much how people thought it was going to look after lots of materials discussions. But I think that the elevator conversation can be reopened, and I think there's some other things. But anyway, I just want to say that that Washington Street project has things that can be accountabilities that can affect what makes it attractive to businesses coming in, and that's something we can bring into the conversation more powerfully.
Thank you, Beth. Just as a summary is that this is the Dottie led project, OCBE, CA, and its CAG are coordinating all of the community outreach, both internally, including Dido, Dottie, Denver Water, and there's also going to be, I think Beth, along with OCBE are figuring out what the external outreach is going to be, including to businesses and residents within the community. So
Can I share one resource? I know we're kind of over time. SEDS Finance is partnering with OEDIT at the state level with $5,000 grants for small businesses, so people know about that. It sounds like Emmanuel's Bakery would be a really great candidate for that. The portal is opening on May 1st. It's going to be super competitive. At 10 a.m., get your application in, and it's a simple application. So I would really encourage getting the word out. I don't know if people are aware of it.
Can you repeat that? Like just
Yeah,
what the grant opportunity is?
Sorry, SEDS Finance. You know SEDS Finance, which is a CDFI. They're in Aurora. This is a statewide opportunity, though. It's funding available to be distributed as grants to underserved small businesses in Colorado. The objective of the program is to address capital accessibility disparities for startup and existing small businesses, aiming to promote economic development in the state with an emphasis on equity, diversity, and inclusion. The grants are small. They'll be $5,000 grants. I think they'll be making like 700.
71 grants.
71 grants.
So it's gonna be, and it's first come, first served, based ranked on income level. So like, imagine the first 20 that come in, like they're gonna rank them from people that are extremely low income, moderate, high, and then bill them that way.
Is it 71 across the state?
Yes. It's gonna go quick.
You for sharing that.
okay, Steve. We had some community meetings last week.
Yes, hi everyone. Again, I'm Steve Nally with the authority. We had a busy week last week on the Equestrian Center Park and Garage Hotel project. We had 2 community meetings, one on Wednesday at Lerton Hall in Louisville, and one on Thursday at Johnson Rec Center in Elyria. Same meeting, same content. We had, I don't know, somewhere maybe 9 or 10 community members in Globeville, and I don't actually know the numbers, maybe 17 or so. At Johnson Rec Center on Thursday. I'm gonna pull up the slides that I presented at that community meeting. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what we discussed. This was the agenda. Hold on. We gave a brief overview of what the National Western Center Authority is all about, an overview of the project itself, the kind of previous outreach efforts that we did, and then had several Q&A opportunities to discuss kind of what we've done so far. I think the big moment of the meeting was to introduce the development partner that was selected, the community activation partners. I'll show you their logo slide here in a second, and introduce the idea of these task force topics. We discussed this at our last CAC meeting, around community space, design input, community use and community investment fund revenue, and jobs as the key focus areas as we step through this project. The roles and responsibilities of that task force, and then a call for a sign up of the task force. That was the agenda. I did present some of this at the last CAC, but wanted to remind folks that these are the groups that make up the community activation partners led by Fingate. And then you can see Hensel Phelps is the contractor, McWiney is the hotel developer, Sage is the hotel operator, Oakview Group is a event promoter that will bring bookings to the campus and hopefully put heads in beds at the hotel. Perkins and Will and 4240 Design Workshop are all designers on the project. ME engineers are MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers. Martin are more civil engineers. So we had representatives from each of these groups at the meeting. I think it was really important for community activation partners to hear from the community and for the community to hear from CAP. And I would just say that there is a lot of horsepower here, and there's a dedication to.
So I have a joker.
Yeah, I have a lot of this place on the question. But it's true. I mean, this is a very powerful team, very capable team, and this group is dedicated to community participation and trying to make this project really meaningful for the community. And they also want to hear from the community and work with the community on what's going on outside of the National Western Center. So we're really excited to work with this team moving forward, and I think it was really it was a cool moment to introduce them at these community meetings. So the other key moment of these meetings is to talk about the task force. So let me just jump ahead to this slide. So this really captures where we are in the project. We are still working on the pre-development agreement with CAP. And as soon as we execute that, we will, which is the first topic that we want to discuss, design in the community space at our first task force meeting with the community. We will work through the design process through 25, start construction. These are approximate dates, subject to change, of course. Hope to enter into operations in 27 or 28. The idea here is that we talk about design and community space early, and then we talk about community use and rates and jobs, and then there is a gap because we have to build the thing. There's several years of construction here. We would re-engage these groups and gear up for operations. And so we did a call for signups to the task force. We plan to have our first task force meeting, we think in May, to jump in with CAP. They will be there to start talking about design. We have not scheduled that yet. We're still working on a date. Stay tuned. And if you all are interested in joining the task force, let us know. We're gonna go in deep, and it will be very focused, a lot of detail, It won't be a meeting like this where we cover multiple topics. We will really go into the project. And so we wanted that dedicated forum and a chance to make that happen.
Do you want to show their roles and responsibilities?
Sure. Whoops. Focus, open to the public. Meet monthly, 2 hours in person with a virtual option. Really every month for the next year, and then reconvene again during construction to prepare for operations. So that's the commitment. There was some discussion of stipends, discussed at our Larry Hall meeting. We're still working on what that looks like, but something that we're definitely considering. I know that, you know, these are hard to commit to. As Angela was saying, it's dinner time and folks are coming home from a long day, and the last thing they want to do is go do more work. But hopefully we can feed folks and make it a fun, enjoyable experience.
Questions or comments? And these slides are already on the, I think, the website. Is that right, Jenna?
Yes, that's right.
So if you want to go to the website for the CAC, those slides are already there. And then we'll be following up with more information as it comes along. Any other comments or questions? With that, I would like just to open it up for public comment. If there's anybody who has been listening and would like to make a comment in general or about any specific issue. More quiet.
I have a question. I'm new to the conversation, so I'm just curious about for the thin gate, what the requirements are, goals around the minority and then not subcontractors.
During the pre-development phase, which is mostly design, there's an 18% participation goal from minority women, small business enterprises. So 18% was set by the Division of Small Business Opportunity, ISBO of the city. And they are responsible for hitting that goal.
And for construction, what?
The construction goal has not been set yet. It will be set following design and probably around when we execute the development agreement, which has to go back to city council, which is seeking project funding. You know, we will know what it costs at that point. We will design it, and then a new goal will be set for construction. Can you guys speak to kind of range of goals for what you would anticipate a construction goal would be?
Yes, like for the livestock center, which is building standard construction here, that goal or there.
We moved through.
Yeah, we did actually, yeah, there. The construction goal on that one was 19% or 19%, I believe. So it's probably gonna generally be in that realm, maybe a little larger. It's a larger project or different types of projects. It also depends on what kind of are the scopes available in those projects. So what we also found, say with the equestrian center, which would have similar aspects to say, the livestock center, there's uniqueness to those because of the footing and the things that go in that building. The durability of the materials, being able to have, you know, horses and hooves and things like that, it just becomes a little bit different, and there's some specialty pieces around that. So that sometimes you don't see like the 20% goals, like some other more like a traditional office building or something like that.
How are they doing with that goal?
I believe they're tracking with it. And then, obviously the design, I think you'll have most of the design in the pre-development at 18, which is pretty high for design, so I think that's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's actually a pretty high goal considering it's a pre-development phase and a lot of work actually goes to attorneys. In this, you know, negotiating an agreement and negotiating a development agreement. And so if you think about the dollars spent on design, that goal it's probably closer to 30%, considering the dollars on design. But the DISBO goal is 18% for that base, so.
Okay, I think we've come to the end. Oh, yes,
Well, I mean, it's more, you asked like question or comment or something, but Even sure Cutie Patoonie's name, because she's been darling.
Stella.
Hi, Stella. She's been just so cute. Thanks for letting me share her. I'm older, so.
No, thank you. This is the most screen time she gets, so it's kind of.
Oh, she's like,
All right, everybody, thank you for being here tonight, and I will see you next month.
I never got lost. I've had, if you just never got, I had the one that has it.